All right. Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. I'm laughing because Fluffy the Grover just posted in the chat that Nightbot is mean. We're going to start looking at the Troubleshooters. I heard about this. I want to say it was on Reddit. I want to say there was a thread, a discussion, someone looking for some chase mechanics. Somebody threw out, you should check out the Troubleshooters. A couple of folks, I think, seconded that recommendation. So I started digging around the Troubleshooters. I want to say I reached out to Helmgast, who I think is one of the publishers. I'm not sure how the publishing for this is set up. There's a link to this in, if you're interested in this, in drive-through. But it's not Modiphius or Helmgast. It's, I guess, this other one, which is called Arcane Asylum. I think if you look at the back of the book here, you'll see that there's like multiple publishers. I don't know how they all get together. So it's a mystery. It's a mystery to me. However, it looks really cool. And of course, once I started seeing kind of more about the game, and it's really clearly going for a Tintin-Inspired adventures. And I was a big fan of Tintin as a young person. And I still have a soft spot for Tintin. So I thought it was really good. Now, I'm going to be looking at the PDF, which they were also kind enough to send me. But I thought I would show off the book because it's a darn nice book. Let me just flip to, I don't know, random page. So it's hardback. It's letter sized, I'm guessing. Nice matte paper. The illustrations are great, obviously, as we'll get into. It's a really nice book. I kind of feel like we're in the golden age, not necessarily of RPGs, though I feel like it may be that too, but just in terms of the production value. One other thing I like is here on the back, it gives some nice stuff. It reminds me of board games with the way it's telling you, hey, this is a core rule book. This is an action game. The complexity is basic. Gives you the dice you're going to need. Hey, you're going to need a D100. You're going to need 76. How many players? And then the age. And maybe this is something that's the norm for Modiphius. I don't have, this is actually the only piece of Modiphius RPG materials I believe that I own, unless I got something through a Humble Bundle or something else. I really dig that a lot. I don't know whose idea it was, but I wish more folks would do that. Flip to the back of the book and get a rundown of sort of mechanics, and age range is great. Number of players is kind of funky because obviously I think, a role-playing game, you can scale it up and down kind of how much you want. So really more to the GM, but in terms of that other stuff, fascinating to get. Well, Flo the Griffin asked when it came out. Let's pull up the PDF and then, well, I actually have it up. Let me, through the magic of modern engineering. Okay. Now we're looking at the PDF. This says 2021. This came out. And Krister Sunderland was project lead, setting and rule design, edited by Brandon Bowling. I'm not sure. And then graphic design and layout is Dan Algstrand of Stockholm something. But it is very, very beautiful. So maybe it's a partnership because here we have Helmgast and Arcane Asylum both listed. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that works. But whatever the thing. Let me read. I guess I'll read the back. I'll leave it here on the forward. I'll read the back of the book. The Troubleshooters. Where in the world will your next adventure take you? Welcome to the Troubleshooters, an action-adventure tabletop role-playing game of international mystery. Set in the mid-1960s in a world with mysterious temples hidden in the jungles, valleys that time forgot, mad scientists, space stations, spies with super gadgets, and villainous organizations scheming for world control, the characters live adventurous lives all over the world. No matter if it is a hunt for a lost treasure, helping someone get their inheritance, stopping spies from stealing military secrets, or foiling the octopus's evil plans for world domination, you just go on adventures. There you go. You will need 6-sided dice and percentile dice. There you have it. So very Tintin-esque in the time frame. I don't know if Tintin's supposed to take place earlier than the 60s. I don't remember. All right. Fluffy says they usually follow stuff like this, but you missed it. Yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff, so I don't blame you. And I feel like, though I don't know, that I wonder if, I'm not sure where you're located, Fluffy the Griffin, if you're in the Americas or elsewhere, but it might have been that this was not marketed heavily in the States. Just because I think even though you can buy Tintin books in the States, it's much more of a niche. Tintin is much more, I think, much more popular in just about everywhere else in the world than it is here. So I'm not surprised that if you're here, I mean, I didn't hear about it either, but usually I'm the last to know about anything happening. Fluffy says that Tintin takes place in the 30s. Okay. I knew it took place in the past. I couldn't remember how far. We'll see. We'll get in the intro. Now, the other thing I don't know, I'm guessing this isn't using, well, yeah, it can't be using Modiphius' 2D20 system because they're saying you need D100s and a D6. So I have no idea what the dice system or really anything is. I'm sure this will be the first of several streams to go through everything. Let's see about this intro here, what we can see. I'm going to try to kind of keep to the most core of the core, but I'm sure I'll get sidetracked here and there. If you happen to be in the chat and you happen to have some experience with this game and there's something that's vital that I missed, feel free to shout it out. Brian Smith says Tintin is dope. The animated movie was pretty Uncanny Valley-ish, unfortunately. Yeah, you know, I kind of got over the Uncanny Valley part of Tintin. I really did actually enjoy that movie, but I hear you that it does sort of skirt that line. But to me, it's nowhere nearly as bad as, say, what's that Christmas movie with the train? Polar Express, which to me is just the nadir of Uncanny Valley kind of grossness. Though it's also, I think, unfortunately, it was maybe in one generation too early in terms of what animation they were trying to do for that movie. Okay, introduction. You may have noticed that this is not a comic book. It's a tabletop role-playing game, albeit one that is inspired by comic books. All right, so I guess I'm going to skip this bit because I don't need we know what a role-playing game is. So I am going to skip some of this. But let's see. Here we have, hello, I'm Electra, professional rally driver for the ERF oil team. I'm one of the best in the field, good enough to compete with world-class drivers. And with a car like the Lancia, I'm among the best of the best. Being one of the few girls in the sport makes me a lot more popular in the media, though. Nobody knows the top drivers of the other teams by name, and nobody could point them out in a crowd. But everyone knows who Electra Ambrosia is. However, being at the center of attention sometimes pulls me into adventures outside the rally track. Luckily, I don't have to face these adventures on my own. So she's, I guess, a sample character. I'll just go through this because it gives us a sense of how they're laying things out. And they're giving this to us before they've explained anything. So I think they kind of want us to see somewhat of what characters look like. So she has some skills: alertness at 65%, credit at 45%, endurance at 65%, engineering 65%. Then we have machinery at melee, search, status at 45%, strength at 45%, vehicles at 75%, willpower at 65%, and other skills at 15%, which we don't know. We have no idea what level she is. I don't even know if there's a leveling system here. Notice I don't see anything that would indicate that there's a class, so presumably it's skill-based without any class system. Abilities: born behind the wheel and been everywhere. She has a complication, that is she's overconfident. Her languages: she speaks Greek, English, and French, and they have different levels here. So her Greek is native, she's fluent in French, and then she can speak English. I'm guessing maybe because English isn't fluent that it's going to be presumed to be more broken or not, just not at the same level as French or clearly her Greek. Her plot hooks, this is kind of cool. So her plot hooks are that she's a media darling. And then she has some gear kits, a racing car, that's her signature. We don't know what that means yet. A film camera, a mechanic's toolbox, a wad of cash, and some beachwear. That's cool. And then let's see, now we have Paul Marchand. And he has some skills: agility, alertness, charm, investigation, melee, prestidigitation. Oh, maybe he's a street magician. Search, security, sneak, subterfuge, vehicles. Other skills are at 15%. So I guess it seems like you have skills that you list out that have different scores, which seem to be higher. It looks like between 45 and 65%. Well, it looks at least one of them at 75%. His is security. Electra's was at vehicles. And then maybe everything else is 15. He has 6 vitality, which I'm guessing is like hit points. He has some abilities, a lockpicker, and he has a 6th sense. His complication is he has a bad reputation. He's fluent and he's native French speaker, but fluent also in English. His plot hooks are he's a do-gooder and he's looking for adventure. And his gear kits are lockpicks, which are his signature, a flashlight, binoculars, disguise kit, and a compact car. And then the last one here on this page, Eureka Mishida, I just want to see if she has different ones. So, yes, she has contacts at 75%, then a few others at 65 and 45, and then everything else at 15. And then, cool. Excelente. All right. And then, so we have a good mix of folks here just to get an idea. Christopher says also seems to be evenly divisible by 5 in all the skills, which means they could have used a D20 instead of a D100 if they wanted to. Possibly. Could just be that's where they're starting. But yeah, we'll take a look. We have some more, but I think we don't need to read through these. But Harry Fitzroy, Annafrid Frida Bachstrom, Eloise Giraud, and Graf von Zadrith, who seems he must be the bad guy because we don't get a stat block, but we get him giving like a Gargamel kind of angry face. And here we get the Troubleshooters. And he must be is he the octopus? No, I guess, well, maybe he's obviously related to the octopus. Okay, here we go. Playing the game. The Troubleshooters, yes, I get that. So the Director of Operations, that's your GM. I really just want to get to the dice. Here we go. And what you need, dice, passports. And I have some passports here. I'll probably show them off because they sent me some. They have a lot of nice props. Passports, which is floating around beneath the desk somewhere, I think, unless it's over here. I guess I can open. Well, I'll open this now since I'm here and I'm in mind. And if I don't later, I will thinking about it. These come in 3 packs. Let me switch to myself for a second. So I get something like this. Maybe I should hold it right side up. So this is a passport, and then on the inside, is this your kind of your character sheet? So you get all kinds of pages with stuff inside. Look at that. Beautiful. And this is kind of really neat. So basically it looks like this is essentially maybe your character sheet, but it's just very cool. Very cool, just a really neat way. I really like those props. Neat way to kind of bring your players into your game, right? You're playing this game where you're going to be adventurers who are obviously going to be crisscrossing Europe, the Americas, all the continents across the world. So what do all these sort of spy adventure types have? Well, they got a passport full of stuff. And then to actually hand somebody something that physically kind of looks like a passport, then get filled out. It's a really thematic way to get folks into the game. And it has that practical usage of being your character sheet, and, where to take your notes. And we have other stuff. Okay, so here we have an example, which I always love, about how things work. The game is played as a conversation. In the following example, the characters have been tracking down a secret base of the criminal organization, the Octopus. It is an underground complex under the Matterhorn. The main entrance is heavily guarded, but they have heard about an emergency exit that they could use. The locals in Bruy-Servinia, I don't know if I got that at all right, the ski resort where the characters are staying, have noticed some unmarked all-terrain trucks going up and down the mountain on a little used side road. So here we have the, I guess, what do they call it? The Director of Operations, aka the referee, says, following the directions, you find a track leading up to the Alpine Forest. Matterhorn rises sharply above you, hidden in mist and clouds, and there is a chill wind blowing. It starts to pour down, and Paul, your 2CV isn't exactly built for off-road conditions. That means making a task check, right? It does, a difficult one. Let me take the wheel. If I can drive a Morris through the desert to Dakar, I should be able to take a 2CV on this lousy road. Right, we switch places. Great, Electra. The track is muddy and steep, so I want a drive task check down 2 pips because of the conditions. If you fail, you'll have to walk. Haha, look at that, 66. Success and good karma. And a story point to me and an experience check. Okay, as you drive on the narrow track, suddenly there's a crack and boom. Lightning strikes a pole next to the road, and the surveillance camera and sensor array at the top goes up in smoke. So you're probably still undetected, and you don't have to make a sneak check to get past it. I see. So maybe that's the good karma or story point that they're using. So there was some kind of surveillance, but they've skipped it. Surveillance camera, That means that we're on the right track. Eventually, you reach the end of the track. Someone has drilled and blasted away the mountain to create a platform and a V-shaped cut in the mountainside and lined the cut with concrete. It's all painted in green and dark olive to hide it. At the far end of the cut, there's a huge blast door with an embossed octopus logotype. This must be it. I get my pistol out and secure the platform and blast door. I get out of the way since I'm in the front seat, but I too get my pistol out. I'm on my guard. Okay, I want an alertness check from Paul and a search task check from Frida. Paul curses because he fails with a 73. And then Frida gets a 9, which is a success despite the low odds. I have search 15. Paul, you don't notice anything strange. There might not have been anything strange in the first place, but if there were, you would notice it. Frida, platform is secured. The only way here is through the blast door, the track you traveled, and possibly dropping down on the platform from above. But that would require a master alpinist. All right, so we'll stop there, but we get an idea of what we're doing. It's kind of, I guess, Call of Cthulhu, D100 style, right? You're rolling under your ability checks. We've seen that there's a few things that we'll hear about later, this idea of good karma and story points. And then also the fact is, I'm not sure where they say you're down, check down 2 pips. Is that putting a -2 on your skill for that? I'm not sure. I'm guessing we will get there. The paradigm of the game. Adventure. This game is about adventure. The Troubleshooters will take you all over the world and sometimes even beyond. There will be danger and challenges, but through teamwork and smart thinking, you can overcome them. Action. The Troubleshooters has car chases, fisticuffs, and shootouts. It has heists and daring stunts. And then the competent cast. The player characters of the Troubleshooters are beyond the norm. They are often jack-of-all-trades sorts that can hold their own in many different areas, as well as competent specialists in their own fields. So this is not a zero-to-hero situation. Your folks are meant to be at least somewhat strong in maybe a particular specialty or a fairly good kind of jack of all trades across several specialties. And with that, a sip of blood orange tangerine spinach for the working man. All right, dice and stuff. I'm skipping over role-playing etiquette, which is good, just in the sense that there's too much to do and not enough time, as usual. The Troubleshooters use 6-sided dice and percentile dice. You will need at least half a dozen 6-sided dice. Ordinary dice will do, but there are custom dice for the Troubleshooters that have a circle on the 4 and 5 sides and an explosion symbol on the 6 side. And I have some of those dice somewhere, but not within reach. So percentile dice are used for task checks at some tables. ND6 is the sum of n number of 6-sided dice, right? A pool of n 6-sided dice has that, and that's for soak rolls, which I'm not sure what that is yet, and recovery rolls. And then damage dice use a pool of exploding 6-sided dice. There we have that. Well, let's see. So here's a typical percentage roll. Great. Sometimes the percentage roll can be flipped, in which case you flip the 10s and 1s die. This is a 3d6 roll. Oh, I like that. This is kind of nice. So they're just giving a run through basically with examples that actually show the dice and have one of the characters kind of just tell you what it is. So here's one, I guess, is the exploding dice. This is me shooting an octopus brute and inflicting 5dx damage. Maybe exploded, that maybe. So the original dice was 5d6. So she rolled a 2, a 3, 2 5s that have those circles, and then the 6, which explodes. So then it looks like she rolled another die, got another 6 that explodes, and then she rolled another die and got a 3. And then she walks through it. So cool. I like it. We have a terms and glossary. Now we get to the cast. What the stats mean. All right. So here's we're getting into. So the plot hooks, these are used to get your character into adventures. They also help define each character's individual motivations. There's a list of 11 possible plot hooks, and each character has 1 or 2 from that list. Adventure modules will have startup handouts for 4 to 6 of the plot hooks, and the director uses 1 or 2 of them to start the adventure. The other players are encouraged to play it up and help make the plot hook character feel truly special. Plot hooks could be used for homebrew adventures as well. So the idea is that you have a number, everyone's going to have a couple of plot hooks, 1 or more at least, attached to them. And then when you're running an adventure, the adventure, if it's a pre-written module through, a first party pre-written module, they will have some plot hooks that are going to match up. Probably it looks like at least half of the plot hooks that are there. You can then pick the ones that are going to fit one or more of your characters. And then as a note for the players, okay, you get the plot hook. Let's say we saw the plot hook for Electra was Media Darling, I think. So if we as the referee decide to lean in on that as our plot hook, you're encouraged to kind of play it along and have fun with it. So the idea here is not is to avoid the thing that comes up in a lot of D&D type games in which everyone's going like, well, what is my reasoning to go? Oh, this is this player's plot hook, but why do I want to go? Well, you want to go because you're friends and this happening to your friend, so go. Kind of saying is like, look, just play up the specialness of that and go forward. So it's a nice note, right? It's hey, this is not that everybody's going to have their own plot hook, and if they don't have a plot hook for this adventure that's specifically tailored to you, you should whine and moan and stay in the hotel while everyone else goes off on the adventure. No, you should play into the fact that this is happening to your compatriots and want to help them. We got talk here about a D12. Oh. So Brian Smith had said that a D100 seems more Euro as it's metric. And then Ian wondered if the D12 is the American die. Good question. I don't know. All right, so we've got skills here, which I think we've got it there measured on a percentile scale. The lowest skill value you can have is 15. Theoretically, the highest skill value you can have in any skill is 106. Interesting. The highest starting value you can have is 85. So seeing that's 106, I'm guessing that the numbers don't have to go in increments of 5. They just do maybe for convenience when you're starting. When making a task check, you try to roll lower than or equal to the skill value in order to succeed. In an opposed check, you also want to roll higher than your opponent's roll. The outcome of task checks are binary. You succeed or you don't. In the case of opposed checks, you win or you don't. But it is good to regard higher rolls as better or more successful than lower ones, even if there is no specific rule that says this. That way you get a bit of extra input when narrating the outcome, plus you train yourself to handle opposed checks. So they're not doing a mixed success, mixed failure, but they encourage you to play around with the values when they come, which is an interesting way to do it. They're basically putting it sort of a GM discretion. I don't think they mean that you should add a drawback. For example, if I rolled on my skill and I rolled a 1, which is the lowest roll I can roll, and if we're looking at this, we want to roll. The ideal roll would seem to be exactly equal to your skill. If your skill is 65 and you roll 65, that's the best, right? Because that's the highest roll you can have while still being at or under your skill level. If you roll a 1, in a sense, that's the worst you can get because it's the biggest gap. But I don't think they mean that therefore you don't succeed, or it should be some succeed with some weird thing happening. But you might want to narrate how if you roll a 65 on a 65, how just expert you are. Whereas maybe if you roll the 1 on 65, it's work and it's effective, but maybe it's clunky, clumsy, sloppy, something like that. Unless a 1 is a crit success, in which case, move my explanation to rolling a 2. Vitality is a measure of your energy, capacity to withstand injury, defensibility, guard, and pain threshold, etc. Yep, I figured that out. Abilities are special rules that enable you to do things most people can't. Some of them are for combat, some are for other situations. There's often some conditions attached. Usually it will cost a number of story points to activate the ability. Abilities have a tier depending on what prerequisites they have. Tier 0 abilities have no prerequisites, while Tier 1 abilities require that you have a minimum skill value in one or more skills. When creating characters, you can pick Tier 1 abilities even if you don't have the required skill value. Each template has 5 abilities to pick from. You normally start with 2 of them. And then, so those are special things you do, but you generally need to spend story points, which I'm guessing is some kind of meta currency you're going to get. We saw in that example, someone rolled something and they got a story point. I'm not sure what the significance of what they rolled was, but there's story points in there. You get them. And then you can activate some abilities. Complications are like abilities, special rules, but instead of enabling you to do things, they limit you in fun and interesting ways. When a complication is triggered, it may give you 1 or more story points. Each template has 3 complications to pick from. You start with 1. This is kind of similar to how I will run things like you're giving someone a disadvantage, a weakness, a character flaw, if you will. They mean it to be fun. They're not trying to do anything super down. But the idea here is that it seems like from this, which is kind of how I run in my game, is that if I give you something like that, it's player driven. I'm not going to, if I say, oh, if you have take on the weakness, let's say your character is greedy, I'm not going to start enforcing in a particular moment, well, your character's greedy. Shouldn't they be trying to steal this or do this or do that? I'm not going to do that. But what I am going to do is say, hey, if you as the player engage your greed in a way that's meaningful, then you can get some kind of meta currency out of it. Same thing here. If you engage with your complication, then you can do it. So you can decide to have a complication that you never deal with, and then you'll never get any story points out of it. Or you could have a complication that you use a lot and try to generate a lot of story points. And I don't know how many you can keep or how they are spent right yet, so we're not sure other than abilities, but you can keep kind of a steady flow. So you're encouraged to play with them, but you don't have to. Wyatt Smith says, yeah, better to reward XP. Yes. Yeah, and then you don't feel like you're picking. One, as a GM, I don't want to have to track them. Two, I don't want anyone to feel like I'm picking on them, because you get in that where some weaknesses, they're harder or they just don't come up as often, and other ones you could come up all the time, and I don't want to be involved with all that. So I just want to leave it as you, the player. You're going to tell me, hey, I am doing this thing. You know, I'm letting my greed get the better of me. All right, fair enough, and then we'll roll. So yeah, I never want to take control of that stuff. Damage. When you fight and hit an opponent, you inflict damage. Damage is measured as a number of d6s, usually between 3 and 5 for close combat weapons and 4 to 7 for firearms. In a fist fight or other unarmed fight, your base damage is 2d6, but it can occasionally be higher if you use abilities. Each 4 to 6 you roll inflicts 1 point of vitality loss. Damage rolls are open-ended, meaning that whenever you roll sixes, you roll 1 additional d6 for every 6 you roll. Right? Okay, so that's basically the exploding d6. Each 4 to 6 you roll inflicts 1 point of vitality loss. I see. So you're rolling a bunch of dice, but you're not adding the dice together. You're basically counting your 4 to 6s, and then the 6s explode. Interesting. So I guess that's why they have the circles over the... No, that was on their 5 and 6s. I'm not sure. No, that was under 4 and 5s, right? So circles are under 4 and 5, 6 explodes. Okay. Protection. Most people don't wear protective gear. It's generally only worn in very special situations. Bodyguards, some public figures, and police in riot gear may wear a bulletproof vest. Soldiers wear helmets. Some specialist combat roles, like door gunners and helicopters, may wear heavy protective gear. And there are occasions when a character might don a medieval knight's armor to sneak around a castle. But other than that, protective gear is very unusual. Protective gear has a protection value, meaning in a number of d6s. A soldier's helmet or a public figure's bulletproof vest has a protection value of 1d6, while a medieval knight's armor has a protection value of 3d6. When hit, you roll a number of dice equal to the protection value. This is called a soak roll. Each 4 to 6 cancels out or soaks up 1 point of vitality loss. Protection dice are not open-ended. Oh, okay. Okay, so let's just take this example. Someone fired a machine gun at you, rolled 76. They got, a few. They got 3. They ended up scoring 3 hits, 3 damage on you. So that's great. So you're like, oh no, but I'm wearing my Kevlar vest. It's got a protection of 2d6. So I'm going to roll 2d6, and I'm looking again for 4, 5s, and 6s. But in the case of the protection, they don't explode. So at best, I can take up 2 points of damage. Otherwise, the rest is getting through. So that's interesting. I mean, I like it in the sense that it fits well within their system. I'm always wondering, and I guess it's something I can't tell about sort of combat speed when you're have stuff that's just dependable. I know my sturdy chainmail is always going to be whatever, and I feel like sometimes with systems that make you roll for what they cover. I want to say that was it Morkborg that did that too, where you had to roll, you rolled for your armor value. I think it was interesting. Definitely is a different vibe. It makes it seem dangerous because you can really be even a knight that's gets to get 3d6 fully enclosed in metal. Doesn't feel you don't feel all that safe, which is probably how they meant it. But I am imagining, given that this is a action adventure game, and like Tintin, like there are guns and things, but you're not generally getting into extended firefights. This isn't Call of Duty, the RPG. And then we have tags, weapon, protective gear, and lots of other items can have 1 or more tags. Tags work a bit like abilities. They are special rules that can be activated in certain situations where they are an advantage or disadvantage to the weapon. All right. Well, they got a little section here on session 0. That's great. We have languages. Let's see. If your languages are binary, you're fluent or you're not. If you're not fluent, your ability to communicate is limited by whether or not you succeed at a task check. Aha. If you are fluent, you rarely have to use the skill languages to get your point across. I see. So if you're not fluent in the skill, you're going to make a roll. If you're fluent, you probably won't have to. And I'm guessing if it's your what do they call you? Sort of your mother tongue, whatever. Then you're set. And then we have creating a team. We have some themes: curious adventures, sleuths, agents, heists. What do you call someone who does a heist? I'm not sure. Heistman? Heisters? Heister? I don't know. Roles within the team. I don't think these are hard and fast. They're just giving examples. You have the doer, the investigator, the muscle, the fixer, the specialist. It's almost like they're building the A-team. And then you have locations. So you can set your location. Where do you work? Where do you live? Where do you have lunch? Kind of asking some questions. A heistler, says Brian Smith. Maybe. Now we have the create a character. Step 1, you pick a template. Step 2, set your skills according to the template. 3, pick your 2 abilities. Pick a complication, which is step 3.5. 4, determine your hit points, your max vitality. 5, pick your languages. 6, select your gear kits, and then choose 2 plot hooks. Bam, bam, boom. There's an optional customize your character, and then you can get some other skills or swap skills around or check your vitality, check your languages, okay, all that stuff. So you can kind of go through and do that, and then you can design your character. And then we have some design ideas, which is a D100 of stuff like, I guess you wear turtlenecks, or you have wild hair, or you like something yellow, you have a monocle and a military cap, thing like that. A Heistelhoff. I like that. And then you decide how you met. So this is your, hey, how did the team get together? And then you bring it all in. And then you can roll up for your meetup location. They have a bunch of different locations. D100, you could probably also just pull up Google Maps and or Google Earth or something and spin to a random location. Or if you have a globe, just do the whole spin it and put your finger down. Here we're getting a list of the templates. You can make templates. You can make templateless characters. What's in the template? Some skills, some abilities, some complications, vitality, their extra languages, their gear kits, and their plot hook suggestions. Let's see. I'm just not going to read through all of these. We have Adventure Scholar, and that's the your Indiana Jones type. Aspiring student, a caring veterinarian, a cat burglar, a cosmopolitan dilettante, a diplomat, a curious engineer, an elite athlete, a globetrotter, an inquisitive journalist, intrepid explorer, plainclothes police, a racing driver even, a suffering artist, a vigilante lawyer, and there we go. And now we have plot hooks. There are 11 plot hooks. So they're going to be very generic, right? Easy. Okay, hey, your archenemy, the octopus, that's one. That's an easy one. You're a do-gooder. You're an exile. You have friends in high places. You're foreign, which means you're just not from wherever you happen to be. You owe someone a big favor, that kind of IOU. You're looking for adventure. You're looking for the past. You're looking for a case. You're a media darling. This was, I forget her name, Electra. I think that was Electra's, which is, and I'll reread that one. You're constantly in the limelight. This not only means constant coverage in magazines and the news, but also that you often know reporters and journalists. So that one seems like an interesting one for the plot hooks. Maybe it could be that a journalist disappears. I'm guessing something to do with publicity and maybe having that those kind of connections that would get you into adventures. I'm guessing you could be in the Secret Service. And then we have some starting adventures. Adventure books have at least 4 startup handouts, each for a different plot hook. If the group has at least 4 players and each character has 2 unique plot hooks, at least one startup handout will match at least one of the characters' plot hooks. When starting an adventure, pick 1 or 2 startup handouts. I don't want to say starting. 1 or 2 startup handouts that fit the characters and deal them to these players. These are the plot hook characters. The director may have to adapt the plot hooks and provide some background to them. Also try to pick plot hooks for the characters that were not plot hook characters in the last adventure. I.e., if your character was the center of the first adventure, then we go in the second adventure, and maybe someone else should be the lead, that kind of thing. So, you spread it around. And then about the plot hook characters, plot hooks are not only used to start adventures, they are also used during the game. In a sense, the plot hook characters become the main characters for the adventure. In printed adventures, they will often be events and clues specifically for the plot hook characters. It's a good idea to incorporate similar clues and events into your adventures for the plot hook characters. If your character is one of the plot hook characters, trying to get things started and pull the other characters into the adventure. So it's kind of interesting here, right? Because on the one hand, if you get the plot hook, then you are sort of the main character of this adventure, which is really interesting and intriguing. And this is one of the problems that arises in a lot of games. You even have that, I think, what is it called, main character syndrome, where some player has decided that their character is at the forefront of all things, that the adventure is about them, right? And well, in this case, in a way, they're saying at the beginning of one of these adventures, well, the adventure is about this particular person, but that there's a responsibility there, which is, okay, so yes, this particular adventure, you are at the forefront or in the middle. You're in the mix. You're the star of this episode. But that means it's your responsibility to get the other folk in. So it's not just, hey, look, here I am. Let me soak up the spotlight and just be center stage. It's no, they're saying here, you're supposed to kind of help get everybody involved and sort of help in a sense, be a little bit of a GM helper, which is kind of an interesting way to put it, right? It'd be one of those things that I think, now we don't know how long adventures are adventures supposed to be, weeks and weeks and weeks of campaigning. Is it just an adventure here talking about a particular episode? Well, that might be sort of one session. Not sure yet. But the idea that you're kind of giving this responsibility, saying, yes, you are going to be the center of this episode or adventure, but now it's on you to corral the other folks and get them interested. Much like in the A-Team, somebody has to do something and they got to take an airplane. So we all got to get together and help BA fall asleep so we can get him on the plane. Or we got to break Murdoch out of the insane asylum because we need him to fly the plane that we have knocked out BA to go into. Ian says, quote, I'm the main character of this world by some anime antagonist. Yep, pretty much. But I mean, usually it's something you're avoiding. In this case, they're kind of embracing it a bit. I kind of like that method of, yeah, we're embracing it, but it's not all going to be, you have some responsibility now to the game. How skills work. Background skills describe your basic capabilities. Social skills describe your interactions with others. Investigation skills are used to gather clues. Action skills are used to resolve physical feats. And combat skills are for combat. How good is good? Skills measure how good you are in certain fields. The lowest possible skill value is 15. The highest is 106. But what about the values in between? If you have a skill around 65%, you are competent enough to work as a professional in that field. If there is a skill value, if your skill value is in the 80% region, you belong to the elite in that field. If the skill value is close to 100, you are a legend. That's a nice thing. So you look at it and say, if I've got 65 in these 7 skills and I could do that professionally and be competent. If I got something in 80, I'm an elite. So it's a nice thing because it's not only just kind of giving you an idea of how successful you'll be with those numbers, which you can obviously factor in, right? 65 means you're going to succeed about 65% of the time, 80%, 80% of the time, etc. But there's also gives you a little bit of role-playing thing. Like you can role-play, if you have a skill at 85, you can role-play that you're one of these elite in whatever thing that is. And then we got a bunch of skills that I'm not going to read through, but, it's not that many. It's things like agility, alertness, charm, and then we have, survival, vehicles, willpower, right? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Let's go through here. Now we have abilities. How abilities work. Abilities are special rules that enable you to do things most people can't. They are the things that allow you to drive a car like a pro or wield a sword like a master. Abilities have several effects, sometimes with stipulations attached. The most common is that it will cost story points to activate the ability. In other cases, the stipulations allow for activation only in some specific situation. Abilities are described in a common format. All right, we'll see that. And then we have some there are tiers, and some of tiers have the prerequisites. Tier 0 has no prerequisites. A tier 1 requires that you have a minimum skill value and 1 or more skills. If it's a tier 2 ability, it requires that you have 1 or more specified tier 0 or tier 1 abilities. And then if it's a tier 3, you have to have 1 or more tier 2 abilities. So obviously the tier 3 are going to be the strongest. We have a section here on creating your own abilities, which I'm going to skip. And let's see, what's one? Here we go. We'll just read the acrobat. So it's tier 1, requires you to have at least 65% in agility. And learning, did they say what learning is? Let's see. After one of the names, there's a healer. There's the header. Or what skills you use. What skill you use for learning. I see. Okay. So you need to use the agility skill, and you have to get 7 successes, I guess, to unlock acrobat. You're a trained acrobat or gymnast able to accomplish the most incredible feats of acrobatics. Task checks, movement task checks are at +2 pips. You can add acrobatic flavor when describing how you move to the next zone. Story points, you can spend a story point to flip an agility or defense task check. In other words, that flipping was you roll your percentile dice, and let's say you get 73 and you've got a 65. That would be a fail. Well, if you have acrobatics, you can spend a story point and you can flip that to now be a 37, which would then be a success. You can also spend 2 story points to stop a fall without being harmed by finding something to grab. The existence of something to grab has to be plausible. You end up hanging from whatever you grabbed. So you can't, if you're literally falling in the sky, you can't posit you grabbing onto a cloud or something goofy, right? You have to, has to make sense. But if you're falling down a cliff, maybe you could grab onto some rock. If you're thrown out of an airplane, maybe you could grab onto the landing gear. You know, you have to have something plausible, but to grab, but you can do that. So that's an example. We've got stuff like Born Behind the Wheel, which is about driving. We've got boxing, which is melee. We've got crafting and being curious. Fighter pilot's tier 2, so you need to have, and you need engineering, ranged combat, or vehicles. Or is it focused is tier 0? That's the rare ability to cut out all distractions and remain focused on the task ahead. Gunman is tier 1. Was there any gunslinger is tier 3, and that requires gunman. So you got to go gunman, gunslinger. I wonder if there's sharpshooter or something. Whoa, there are 67 throws in Kodokan Judo that you can use to throw a mook out of the scene. Wow. Oh, look at that. So you can, I'm not even go through all these, but you have some hand throws, you have some hip throws, you have some foot throws, forward sacrifice techniques, and side sacrifice techniques. I don't know what a sacrifice technique is, but it sounds cool. And a Judo Master is a tier 2. I don't think I've seen a tier 3. Just want to see what one would be. Oh, I didn't see it. There had to have been one there somewhere, but I didn't see it. All right, not a big deal. Complications. So remember, you can pick up those complications. That's like a weakness, some kind of disadvantage, a character flaw. How to use complications. There are 4 primary uses for complications. As a guide for the player on how to act in character, as a source of inspiration for trouble that the director can inject into the plot, as a guideline for interpreting the rules when complications make life more difficult for that character, as a source of story points for the player. Story points and complications. After the general description of each complication, there's a header that lists possible ways of using it to gain story points. Okay. Story points are gained in 2 different amounts. 3 points for making a task check in a scene more difficult, or for failing a successful task or taking a condition. 6 points if you write yourself out of a scene altogether. I'm guessing write yourself out of a scene would be something like, oh, the party's in a bar, they're trying to wait for some witness, and then you have your complication is you like a drink. You're a drinker. So you could take 3 points for getting just drunk and getting into kind of some kind of difficulty that way. But you could take 6 points if, let's say, you said, yeah, I'm going to just drink myself into a stupor and, fall asleep or unconscious or whatever in a booth in the corner. And so I miss out on whatever happens, which obviously means your party's down someone, but you're going to get 6 points, which you might then be able to use later to bail them out. So it's pretty interesting that the more you take on in terms of interfacing with that complication, the more of that meta currency you get back out of it. So let's look at these. We have amorous, bad reputation, code of honor, combat paralysis. Sound very similar to what we saw in GURPS. I know a code of honor was the one I would always take when I was making GURPS characters, because it seemed like a no-brainer, because I like to play with codes of honor anyway. So then getting points back basically for taking it was like, why don't I just take it? So in this case, in the Troubleshooters code of honor, there are things that you simply do not do. It's not just a matter of upbringing or politeness. It's a matter of principles of honor. Yes, it may limit your options, sometimes severely, but if it distinguishes the civilized world from the brutes and barbarians, then so be it. So you can gain 3 story points when a villain gets away because of your code of honor, like you won't shoot a guy in the back or do something like that. You gain 3 story points for taking -2 pips on an action that goes against your code of honor. So if you were forced to shoot at him in the back and you decide to, you're going to try to miss purposefully, but you got to make it look good kind of thing, then you could take those 2 pips off. Or you could gain 6 story points when someone betrays your code of honor, which is really interesting. So you're there and the bad guy is getting away and you say, I'm not going to shoot him in the back. I refuse. And someone else grabs the pistol and shoots anyway. It does whatever, you would gain 6 points. They betrayed your code. Fluffy says that this is awesome. They love this kind of role play risk reward. Yep, I do too. And I like it that it's totally on the player, right? It's not the GM saying, "Oh, you did this, then whatever." It's like, no, it's on you. You can be as you can be as into it or as not into it as you want to. And notice that unlike in GURPS, you're not getting points for it, right? You're taking the complication. The complication can give you a meta currency, but in GURPS, you would take one of those disadvantages and it would give you more character generation points. So you could make your guy stronger by taking these weaknesses. So that makes it a little bit incumbent in terms of balance that you have to play up or you have to do something with those weaknesses because you've got something in return. In this case, you have them and they essentially don't mean anything until you bring them out. They didn't give you any extra points. You didn't get any extra skills. It's just there until you as a player choose to use it. So which I like a little bit better because it always feels like if you're getting something out of it in the character generation aspect, then I feel like as the GM that we need to enforce it a little bit more because that ends up being a little bit broken, right? If someone didn't take disadvantages and got some points for character generation, you took a few of them and then you got a lot more points and then those disadvantages never come out, then you've essentially broken the balance between these characters, right? Whereas I want to keep them on the level as much as possible. So I like this one that it's either use them or you don't. So we have actions now. The Troubleshooters display as a dialogue between the players and the director. The director usually sets the scene and describes it. The players describe how their characters act or react. The situation develops as is reasonable or by using and interpreting the rules. Other things happen as a result. This way you create a story together. Sometimes the outcome of an action is not that clear. You may need some structure to progress through a scene, or you may want a way of resolving actions that everyone agrees is fair. That's when you use task resolution, and then that we already saw that. So we're getting some scene setting stuff. You frame your scene. I don't usually love talking about, scenarios, moments as scenes, but I think I'm forgiving it. I'm forgiving of it here because of the theme. And this game is kind of laid out like a action adventure sort of movie or series. So I think the scene things feels more appropriate. I'm not a big fan of like in D&D people talking about scenes and stuff. But that's just me, So we have your standard task checks. You have your modifiers. These are bonuses you can add or penalties to. If it's very easy, you add 5. If it's easy, you add 2. Challenging is the norm. If it's hard, you subtract 2. If it's very hard, you subtract 5. And you can stack, you can stack modifiers. If you succeed, the task succeeds. If you fail, a failed task check means that the task has failed. You don't get to try again. Not even your friends get to try. You need to significantly change the circumstances to get to roll again. So that's a good thing to have noted there. You cannot just do the endless, he failed to pick the lock. Can I try to pick the lock? Oh, I've got 30 in lock picks. Can I try to pick the lock? No, you pick the lock and it's not picked. I mean, you could kind of set it up in the fiction by saying that you tried to pick the lock and now the lock is completely jammed. But the idea here is you can't just go back to the well and picking it. You have to change the circumstances. You have to do something radically different or look at it a very different way in terms of, say, a lock that you're trying to pick. Okay, so now the lock, no, you're not picking it that way. Maybe you have a big pair of, bolt cutters. Maybe you're going to see if you can use the bolt cutters to open it. It's not, you're not using the lock picks. Maybe that would be enough. Maybe if you had a blowtorch, you could try to get rid of the lock that way. Or if you had a sledgehammer, you could try to hit the lock. But you can't just go back and hand your lock picks around and have everybody take a turn until you break through. You got to change up what's happening. Experience ticks. If you use the regular experience system, you get an experience tick when you use a skill in a meaningful way. i.e. the plot progresses because of it. For the first time during a session, there is a small checkbox for it next to the skill value. You can only have 1 tick per skill. You don't need to make an actual task check for the skill. You just have to use a skill in a way that progresses the plot. You should not abuse the system and use a skill just to get the tick. That doesn't progress the plot, and the director may and should veto this experience tick if you do. Here are some situations that may be vetoed. Someone else has already made a task check and failed. There's no risk, danger, or challenge. The action is not important to the story. So essentially, by using your skills, you'll get ticks, which I'm assuming is how you're going to be able to upgrade them. But there's no hard and fast rule, but they're saying don't abuse it. And as a referee, you're able to someone that says, ooh, I'm going to do something in a meaningless situation, like I'm just driving around the block to get my driving tick. And you, the director, are encouraged to say, no, it's not moving anything forward. There's no risk, danger, or challenge. So no, you're not getting a tick for that. You might give me a nervous tick, pal, but you're not getting a skill check. Skill tick. We have opposed checks. I think we understand flipping checks. We saw earlier. You can take the dice. If you rolled 73, you can flip it to 37. Karma. If you roll the same number on both dice for a percentile task, like 11, 22, etc., you gain karma and a story point. If the roll succeeds, you gain good karma. If the roll fails, you gain bad karma. Good karma means something positive happens as agreed upon by you and the director. Some situations provide specific rules for good karma. Here are 2 basic fallback suggestions, but be sure to describe what happened. So these are: the next task check you'll get +2 pips. The next task check your opponent makes gets -2. I think these are just fallbacks, very generic, but if you can't think of anything else, you got those. Bad karma means something bad happens. As with good karma, some situations provide rules for determining the outcome. Here are two simple fallback suggestions, and it's just one is enemy reinforcements arrive, so that's kind of like your orcs attack. Like, oh, the bad guys have showed up. Octopus is here, and then the other one is your next task check is at -2. Whew. All right, so we have challenges. How are we doing on time? Oh, do I want to get in challenges? I think what I'm going to do is we'll do challenges on the next one. I think the system is pretty clear. I could see why they put this up as basic, not in terms of it being, basic in terms of complexity or difficulty, because I feel like it's fairly easy to use. The D6s with the exploding D6 for your damage and similar kind of effect dice, and then percentages for skills. I like the idea that you could have abilities that could flip the dice. I like the good and bad karma when you roll doubles. And it's interesting that it depends on, hey, you rolled, some doubles are going to be good, some doubles are going to be bad. Therefore, it's kind of just a different way of doing your critical, kind of a little bit of your critical success or critical failure. But there's obviously, would be, I guess, 10 total numbers. Would be 11, 22, 33, 44, 55, 66. Oh, I lost myself. Hold on a second. So you'll have a chance. Here I go. I'm back. So, oops. There we go. Now what happened again? Oh, come on. No video. Come on, video. All right. I'm not sure what's happening with the video. It just came back. I thought I had it come back, and then it left again. In any case, what I was going to say is with the system, you have maybe 10 different opportunities to get this doubles, right? Because 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6, all the way to 0s. But the cool thing is the higher your skill roll, the higher your skill is, the less of those are going to be fails. So if your skill is 15, there's 8 out of 10 of those 8 out of 10 of the crits are going to be bad karma. But if your score is 80, then 8 out of 10 good karma, or 7 out of 10. So it's pretty cool. And I like that kind of scaling. It's that thing that I always look for when people say, oh, I want fumble tables, because in this case, when we think of fumble tables, they actually punish folks who have higher skill because they're going to tend to have more attacks and therefore they're going to get more chances to fumble. In this case, having a higher skill is definitely going to decrease your chance of having some sort of bad karmic fumble. So really cool. Fluffy the Griffin says it looks very streamlined. Honestly, over crunch heavy games, so it looks fun. Yes, it's I mean, I can't say I'm over crunch heavy games, but I haven't actually played a crunch heavy game for a while. So maybe I am over it. I just haven't used that yet. But yes, it is nice to have something. And I always like these games. I kind of know what they are. This clearly has a theme that they're going after. They're trying to give you this sort of Tintin-like experience. They're not trying to be something like GURPS or D&D where they want you to be the game for everything. They're giving you a very specific experience, which allows you to streamline everything and not worry about, well, what if you played this as some kind of dark, a grim horror Cthulhu game? It's like, this is not that game. You're not playing this game if that's the game that you want. So they can just kind of zoom in and say, okay, here's this core experience we're going to give you, and we're going to stay within this little box that we're building ourselves. And so far, so good. I mean, the layout and everything is great. The art is great. The theme is great. We'll get more into some of these I guess specific it looks like maybe mechanics for some different things. I think this is where we're going to find probably is where we're going to see the chase mechanic or chase subsystem that I'm interested in, and then we'll look at some of the other materials as well. I have I think I might have at least one of the adventures that we'll get into looking at that and some of the other stuff. So probably, I don't know if it'll be tomorrow or the next day, whenever, sometime over the next few days, I'll be mixing in more about the Troubleshooters. But so far, so good. Thumbs up from core rules thus far. Let me know what you guys think in the comments and wherever you find it. You give a thumbs up on your way out, that'll be awesome. If you feel like subscribing and you're not subscribed already, that would also be awesome. But otherwise, game on, everybody, and I'll talk to you later. Troubleshooters, y'all. 10-10 for the win.